And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers deck building game. Now this deck building game from Cryptozoic is very similar to one of their first games, a penny arcade game, and then it's actually compatible with the DC deck building game and then the Lord of the Rings deck building game. Now it actually makes more sense to mix it with the Lord of the Rings because of the same theme, and the DC deck building, it's kind of a little odd. Now I hated the DC deck building game. No bones about it, I hate it. The main reason I hated DC deck building game was because the theme and the mechanics had such a disjointed disconnect. Let's take a look at this one and see what my thoughts on this one are. In this game, each player picks a hero. You could be Legolas or Samwise or Merry and Pippin or Frodo or Aragorn or Gimli. You know, they're typical heroes from the movie. Now, each of these heroes, instead of having a special ability, the way it works is you're going to get a starting deck. You get 3 despair cards and 6 courage cards and then 1 special card. For example, this is Legolas' special maneuver card. So each person has a special card. You're going to take these cards together and you're going to shuffle them, and this is going to be a deck that you're going to use over the course of the game. You're going to draw 5 cards on your turn and one player is going to start. Now, in the middle of the table, we have the path here. This is a big deck of cards here that's going to be randomly shuffled, and random cards are going to be placed here, 5 of them face up. There's also going to be not so random cards. There's the One Ring card over here. There's going to be a stack of Valor cards up there. There's going to be a stack of Corruption cards, and then there's going to be some arch enemies here. Now, these arch enemies, you're always going to start with Corrupted King Theoden. He's a level 1 archenemy. And you're always going to end with Saruman, Lord of Isengard, as the level 4. But in between, you'll have some random level 3s and level 2s arch enemies that you have to fight as the game progresses. So, the different cards in this game, on the different cards, you have a couple things. First of all, this card here has an 8 power. That's how much power it takes to defeat that card. This card also can be worth victory points at the end of the game. You'll see that it's worth 4 victory points here. If you beat the big bad guy here, he's worth 10 victory points at the end. And then there's special abilities on the different cards. On your turn, you play the cards that are in your hand. So here, let's say I play these cards. I play Despair. It's worthless. I hate having these Despair cards. Each courage gives me +1 power, so I have 3 power. This something is out there. It says reveal the top card of the main deck, and my power is equal to the victory point value of that card. So I reveal it. Has a victory point of 2, so that's 2. So I have 2, 3, 4, 5 power that I can spend this turn. Essentially, power can be used to fight creatures or buy them. So I could buy the Hornburg here for 3, or I could buy the best salt in all the Shire for 2, or this one here, leave now and never come back for 5. If I don't see anything that I really want, I can always go over here and buy Valor cards for 3. And if I get enough power, which I'm trying to get 8 power there, I can smack Corrupted King Theoden. Whatever cards you take, so let's say I take Leave Now and Never Come Back, that card and all the cards I play on my turn are discarded. The card in the middle is replaced with a new card, and I draw 5 new cards. However, this card in the middle that I just drew has an ambush on it. Now that ambush here affects the next player. This says if the wall has not been breached, destroy each ally in the path. The wall hasn't yet been breached, and so these allies here are destroyed. And we draw 2 new ones. Hopefully neither one of them has an ambush. They don't. So this will continue. Once King Theoden, Corrupted King Theoden, has been beaten, the next guy shows up and he has a group ambush, something bad that affects everyone. So in this instance, he says each player reveals his hand and discards an ally. Each person who cannot do so discards a courage instead. So that's not a fun thing to do. So these are group ambushes that happen when he shows up. Now, several of these cards mention the wall. There's a deck of wall cards here. Many times you'll have to draw these wall cards. If you go through the whole deck of wall cards, you lose. Most of the time the wall cards are bad things that happen to you. Gain a despair from each other player's discard pile. Gain a corruption. These corruptions are negative point cards that will clutter up your deck. There's also one very bad card in here that says Breached. When this comes up, you put it in front of you and you're -1 power for the rest of the game. And the wall's now been breached. A lot of cards mention the wall being breached. Well, now that I've done that, let's take a closer look at some of the cards. There's all sorts of cards here that are from the movie, The Two Towers, of course, and you'll want to buy them. Like, for example, here an ally is 3 power, but this is a really great card. He's +3 power. The problem is if you don't kill an enemy, a red card, then you destroy this card at the end of the turn. So it's kind of a dangerous one to have. Here's +2, but you can destroy this guy once you have him for +4. This is just a straight +3 power. Here's a +1. You can put an artifact from your discard pile on top of your deck. Artifacts are blue cards that you can use. These are locations. Now, locations play differently. Most of the cards, when you play them on your turn, you take their power and go away. When you play a location, it will stay in front of you. So if you put this one out here, Fangorn Forest, all allies and enemies that cost 4 or less that I play on my turn are +1 power. So it's like a special ability that you've gotten. Other cards, I mentioned an ambush here. Draw wall cards equal to the level of the current arch enemy. Here, draw 2 wall cards. If the wall's not been breached, you can reveal a maneuver to avoid this ambush. Ambushes can be a pain in the neck, and there's lots of ambushes on these cards. Not only are there ambushes, but sometimes when you play you can play a card yourself that attacks the other players. Each other player reveals the top card of their deck. If it costs 1 or greater, they discard it. Pain in the neck. Fortunately, there's lots of defensive cards in the deck. You can discard this card to avoid an attack or ambush. If you do, draw a card or put a card that costs 1, 2, or 3 from your discard pile in your hand. So there's lots of different defensive cards, an Elvish Cloak, or the best Salt in all the Shire. There's also the One Ring card. This starts next to the path unless someone's playing Frodo. He gets to start with his card, the One Ring. You can discard, this gives you +1 power, period. However, you can always discard it, basically putting it back next to the path, to avoid any attack or ambush. So there's these defensive cards, and then there's other cards. Here's an ally, and there's cards that affect the One Ring. If the One Ring is in play, this card is +3 power. Otherwise, it's +1 power. It's +2, and you can take the One Ring in front of you. Then there are other cards that are worth extra victory points at the end of the game. This one is +1 power for each long bottom leaf you play. At the end of the game, it's worth 1 for every long bottom leaf you have. So if you have 1, it's worth 1. If you have 2, they're each worth 2. If you have 3, they're each worth 3. You get a lot of points with these. And Dead Marshes, there's other ones that have extra points at the end of the game. So what you'll do is you're going to play through this, taking turn, ambushing and attacking each other. The game will end either when all the walls go away, or when all these cards are gone, or when all the enemies in the archenemy stack have been defeated. At that point, whoever has the most points is the winner. I said that you all lose when the walls. You don't actually really all lose. Whoever has the most points is the winner, but I feel like you've all lost. If this is not good enough for you, there are actually an impossible mode where you have basically the same arch enemies as in the original game, except they're much harder, in case you thought the original game was easy. Now, I suppose if you had the first one, I have not actually played the Lord of the Rings deck building game, but I'm assuming it plays fairly similar. Probably the difference is there's no wall cards in that one and such, but there's probably a lot of similarities between them otherwise. And I think it makes sense to mix them together. The theme would work really well. Mixing it with the DC heroes, okay, fine. I guess if you want Superman to punch Saruman, that would be pretty cool. In the face, you have that. But let's take a look at this game in of itself. I'm going to start out by saying some bad stuff here. Okay, first of all, the wall breach card, that just annoys me so much. The person who draws it is -1 power for the rest of the game. In this game, that is a huge negative thing. There's no way to get rid of it. It's totally random who gets it. You can try to avoid wall cards as much as you can with your defensive cards, but eventually you're going to get one. And it's very discouraging if you get that. It's very difficult to win the game when you have such a negative thing put on you. And I don't like that random thing. In fact, if I was playing this game again, I would make a house rule that just does not happen. Yes, the wall's still breached when you get that, and maybe you're -1 power for the next turn. But to make it hit you for the rest of the game is a very unfair, random disadvantage. And it's stupid, really. Other than that, I like you know what? There really isn't much more negative to say about this game. It's very light, okay? It's very light, although better than the superhero one. But anyway, it's very light, but there's a lot of... It makes sense on how everything works together. It's still a little odd that you're killing enemies and then those enemies come in your deck and help you later. Not sure how that works in the life, but there's a lot of things I like. I like that the heroes do not have special powers, that they have a card. That's great, because if your card's really good, you say, oh, your card seems to be better than mine. It doesn't matter, because as the game progresses, the cards will come up less and less. And I didn't really feel like they were imbalanced anyway. The art is good, even if it's just pictures from the movie. Usually pictures from a movie looks a little dorky in these kind of settings, but they actually fit into this one pretty well. I like the wall aspect. I like that, there's a lot of defensive cards in this, and there's lots of things. But you have to realize it's light. You have no idea what cards are going to be out there. There's these cards in the game called fortune cards. These cards look like this, and when they show up, they cost 0, and they're just really cool things. When you buy this one, you gain an enemy and put 2 random wall cards in the bottom of the wall deck. Here, when you buy or gain this card, play it, then destroy it. You pay 4 less to defeat arch enemies this turn. They're just really good cards, but they just come up randomly. And that's fine. The randomness kind of smooths out, and there's still strategy, will I buy this card? How do I use this? Should I discard this card now for the extra power, and so on. But you got to go in thinking it's light. So I hated the DC deck building with a vomit-inducing passion. And yet this one doesn't bother me. Now I think that's because the DC deck building one had just huge disconnect between the theme. You were Superman or Batman or Flash, and you would be Flash maybe, and you were using Superman's strength and Batman's gadget belt, and you were using Ra's al Ghul to help you. None of that made any sense at all. Here, you're legless, but when you play these cards, it feels like those people are coming alongside to help you. That you're like at the front of a battle leading a charge. And the One Ring is thematic, and the wall deck is thematic, and the bad guys are... I don't know. You all fought them together. It's not like, oh, here's just another random bad guy to fight, I guess. It just seems to work better. And I know I'll probably take some flack, and you say, how can you like one and not the other? Now, I don't love this one because I think it needs a little bit more. It's a little too light for me, but I think that there's enough here, and I think people are going to enjoy this if you like Lord of the Rings and you like deck building games, and this is really a good match for you. Now, if you're looking for something deeper, this doesn't have it. And there is still that flaw of that wall breach card. That's pretty bad, but that's fixable, I suppose. So, what is that? A mishmash of a review. Do I like it or not like it? Do I like it? I kind of like it. It could be better, but it's not as horrible as I thought it was going to be. How's that for an endorsement?
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door!
There.